So between him and Lamar Jackson, I think it's that close. That's the way I'm at with it. Christian McCaffrey said 13 touchdowns run, 7 touchdown catches. You sitting up there looking at this. Marshall Faulk in 2000 was named league MVP that season. He was one of the few people that had ever done that in a single season, Shannon. And you got O.J. Simpson and Chuck Foreman, both in 1975, when O.J. Simpson finished runner-up to MVP for Fran Tarkenton, where you see those kind of numbers being brought up here. Christian McCaffrey, first rushing yards first with 1,292, scrimmage yards first with 1,801, total touchdowns tied for first with Monster to Miami, and rush yard per attempts he's at 4th. And then I got to take into account what did Purdy look like when Christian McCaffrey was out, when Deebo Samuel was out, when Trent Williams was out. And I got to say, wait a minute now, I got to look at the consistency and amount.
Let's go. A lot of discussion going on about who's the MVP. Right now, the odds have it with Brock Purdy as being the favorite. I think it's up to like minus 190 at this point. So he's pretty much a clear favorite for the MVP, but that can change week to week based on performance and other guys having a breakout. If I've got to pick an MVP right now, I think for me, it's between Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill pretty much with if he wasn't hurt this past game and play, I think he would definitely go over the 2,000-yard mark. Knowing Tyreek Hill, mathematically, there's still probably a way that he goes over the 2,000-yard mark somehow, some way. I mean, he's at 1,542. It's a stretch. You got 3 games. You need 458 yards. I mean, those are going to be monster games, right? Like, doing the math in my head, we're talking about averaging, 152, 153 yards a game for the next 3 games. Probably not going to get to 2,000. But with a 1,900-yard season, man, I think you have to think about this guy as a potential when it comes to that MVP award. When you think about Christian McCaffrey, when you look at the 49ers record with Christian McCaffrey versus their record without him, Christian McCaffrey is a beast. I mean, we're talking about 1,200 yards, so 1,292 yards, so we might as well say 1,300 at this point, 13 touchdowns. So he's leading the league in rushing yards. He's second in touchdowns. And then when you start looking at his receiving, right, you got to give this guy credit, man. 509 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns in the air. So 20 touchdowns accounted for. He's only had 3 fumbles all season, lost 2 of them. But we're talking about 1,799 yards, 20 touchdowns. So by the end of the season, he'll be at 2,000 yards, I would say. I think they have the number 1 seed wrapped up, so they'll probably sit them the last week. So he's got 2 games to get 200 more all-purpose yards, 201. He'll do that. 2,000 all-purpose yards. I would say 23 touchdowns. To me, he's got to be the MVP. The numbers are similar to Marshall Faulk when he won the MVP years ago. I think you got to give it to Christian McCaffrey. Now, mind you, Brock Purdy is the favorite. They're in the same offensive room. Has Brock Purdy had a great season? Yes. Is Brock Purdy elite? That question is still out there. We don't know quite yet, but I'm ready to say that he looks like he's going to be elite. Earlier in the season, I said no. It was just an outright no. But after watching him play in some tough games that I believe a lot of teams who are going to be playoff teams, who are teams that would have really brought the heat in terms of how good their defense is and how he played. I think you have to say he's on the pathway to be elite. What are your thoughts on the MVP conversation, Dub?
I know you mentioned the likes of Tyreek Hill. I know you mentioned Brock Purdy. I know that you mentioned those 2 individuals. All offensive guys, right? But we haven't taken the time to acknowledge some of the great defensive play that's going on this season, which leads me to my MVP selection. I'm going to have to go with Myles Garrett. I'm going with Myles Garrett because the guy has a total of 13 sacks, a ton of tackles on the defensive line, and that guy is dominant. Every single play that I've seen for the most part from the Cleveland Browns, this guy is double teamed. And when he's not double teamed and he's one-on-one, It's a matchup nightmare. He's getting to the quarterback. He's getting the sack. He's doing something constructive to help his team win ball games. And so when you take a look at the construct of not Denver Broncos, the Cleveland Browns offense, to me, in my opinion, is kind of lacking. It's kind of lacking. And what's occurring is that the defense is keeping them in the game, and it's all because of Myles Garrett leadership and what he's doing in the trenches. So shout out to Myles Garrett. Way to rebound after the controversy that happened a few years ago. I still think something was said to him that sparked him, because he's a pretty laid-back guy for the most part, and I've never seen him out of character before. But nonetheless, I think his name should be in those MVP conversations when we're talking about when we talk about MVP, we're talking about the most valuable player on the team. I don't think Brock Purdy is the most valuable player on this team. Tyreek Hill is, so that's definitely a debate, but Myles Garrett is that guy.
Myles Garrett. Now, hold on, though. Let's think about this. Now, Defensive Player of the Year?
I'm saying MVP. I'm saying MVP.
I don't even think he's a front runner for Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh man! Wow. Okay.
I mean, you would have to. First off, you said he's got 13 sacks.
Yeah.
Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals has 15. So, yeah. And I could probably name a number of other guys that have more sacks. Deron Bland and what he's done.
Mason Crosby, all these guys.
It's a lot of guys.
But the thing about it is that just because you have more numbers, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily make you the most valuable player on that team.
I agree 100%. He might be the most valuable player on the Browns team, but is he the most valuable player in the league?
They got the top defense in the NFL, man. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I just think that it would be like a long shot. Maybe that's a bet we need to place in Vegas. I think it would be a long shot.
It's not going to happen. The offensive player is going to win the MVP because the NFL is offensive centric. That's why you have someone like Christian McCaffrey that has 2,000 all-purpose yards. And it's pass-centric. So that's where you got Tyreek Hill almost eclipsing 2,000 yards when you got Christian McCaffrey. And let's be honest, 1,200 yards is definitely a lot of rushing yards. When you're talking about 18 regular season games, historically, there were a myriad of running backs that used to surpass 1,000 rushing yards.
17 regular season games.
17 regular season games. There used to be 10, 12 running backs that would just eclipse 1,000 rushing yards. We don't see that as often anymore because we're so pass-centric in the NFL.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think, but to your point, with what we're seeing with it being pass-heavy, he's still leading the league in rushing. So out of all the guys that are getting attempts, he's the top dog. And then when you look at touchdowns accounted for, 20 touchdowns. That, I think that those are impressive.